I want to start today with probably the biggest question there is, the one that keeps people staring at the ceiling at 3 a.m. Why are we here?
It really doesn't get any bigger than that, does it?
No. Is this universe, a handcrafted masterpiece meticulously designed by some grand architect? Or is it a cosmic accident, just the result of natural laws grinding away for billions of years?
That is the ultimate divide. And today we're jumping straight into the deep end of that debate. We are looking at a really provocative piece from the blog Synapse Soul.
Right. The post is titled Beyond the 7 Myths of Faith, 7 Irrefutable Chapters in Search of Truth. And just for some context, this is actually a follow-up piece, isn't it?
It is. The author kind of starts with a confession. They look back at their first book on the topic and realized, I left the back door open. They felt the earlier arguments weren't, totally watertight.
So they went back to the drawing board.
Completely. Went into hibernation mode reading, studying logic, looking at the hard sciences, and they came back with 20 strong arguments. Today, we're going to walk through the first 7.
Okay, so before we get into the weeds, I think we should set the ground rules for this deep dive. Our mission isn't to tell you what to believe. We're not picking a fight.
Not at all. We're just exploring this one specific source, this author's attempt to dismantle traditional arguments for God using, science and logic.
The tone is very specific. The author challenges what they call blind faith. They're asking us to look through the window of rational thought.
It's all about what happens when modern science really confronts ancient beliefs. So yeah, we need to put on our critical thinking caps for this one.
Let's get right into it then. Chapter 1, the design versus evolution debate. And they kick this off with the famous watchmaker analogy.
William Paley's classic argument, yeah.
It's so intuitive, right? If you're walking on a beach and you find a watch, you see the gears, the springs, you immediately assume a watchmaker built it.
You don't think the waves just, assembled a Rolex by accident.
Exactly. So the argument goes, if the universe is infinitely more complex than a watch, surely it had a designer too.
It appeals to our pattern-seeking brains. We see complexity and we just assume intent. But this is where the source really pushes back. The author says the analogy is flawed because it's comparing, apples and oranges.
And machines and living things.
Precisely. Because a watch doesn't have babies.
That's the crux of it.
It is. A watch is static. It doesn't pass on traits. But living things do. The author brings in Darwin, pointing out that butterfly wings, or the human eye things that look designed, are actually the result of 4 billion years of tiny, continuous modifications.
But looking at an eye, it's so hard to shake that feeling of perfect design. It's just so precise.
It feels precise because we only see the finished product. We don't see the millions and millions of prototypes that failed along the way. But the author brings up a great counterpoint to this idea of a grand designer, which is the whole concept of flawed design.
This is where they talk about the human body being a bit of a mess.
A bit of a mess is putting it mildly. The question is, if the designer is all-knowing, why are there so many mistakes? The author points right to the human appendix.
Right. Doesn't do much, but it can kill you.
It's a ticking time bomb in your gut. And then there's the blind spot in our eye.
I remember this from biology class.
It's a classic. The optic nerve, the wiring, passes in front of the retina, which blocks part of the view. It creates a blind spot. An engineer designing a camera would never do that. You'd put the wires in the back.
And some animals have it the right way.
Yep. Octopuses have eyes wired correctly. The source argues this shows we weren't designed from scratch. We were just cobbled together by evolution, which has to work with the parts it's already got.
That connects to another idea they mention, the god of the gaps.
Oh, this is a fascinating historical point. The author says that for most of history, anything we didn't understand was just God. What's lightning?
God's anger. What's a plague? God's punishment.
Exactly. But then we learned about atmospheric physics and germ theory. The gaps in our knowledge started shrinking. And the author's point is that saying, I don't know, therefore God, is a losing strategy because science eventually tends to fill that gap.
Okay, so if the physical world suggests a messy process, what about the instruction manuals? The source moves right on to chapter 2. The validity of holy books.
And they go straight for the logical foundation.
Circular reasoning. How does the author apply it here?
It's that perfect loop of authority. You ask, why is this book true? And the answer you get is, because God wrote it.
Okay.
Then you ask, well, how do we know God exists? And the answer is,
because the book says so. You're using the claim to prove the claim.
you can never step outside the circle. The source argues that for any text to be valid, you need external evidence, not just its own insistence that it's true.
And the author also has issues with the scientific accuracy in these texts.
Well, yeah, this is the correction versus dogma argument. These books often reflect the limited worldview of their time, texts that imply a flat earth or the sun revolving around us.
But most believers would say those are metaphors now.
They do, but the source argues that's just moving the goalposts. If a book claims to be the perfect word of the universe's creator, shouldn't it get the basic facts about that universe right? Science, it admits when it's wrong and updates itself.
Whereas dogma, by definition, can't change.
Right. And then there's the multiplicity problem. There isn't just one holy book. There are thousands. And they all claim to be the one and only truth.
So how do you choose?
You can't, objectively. The author says your belief is almost always just an accident of geography.
Let's shift to chapter 3. This one's about things that seem to defy explanation. Miracles. The author's take is very mathematical.
It's all about the law of large numbers. Basically, what we call a miracle is often just a statistical anomaly.
They use the lottery analogy, which I think really helps. If I win the Powerball, to me, it feels like a 100% grade A miracle.
It feels like the cosmos aligned just for you. But look at the math. Millions of people bought tickets. Statistically, it was inevitable that someone would win. It's not magic, it's just probability.
So with billions of people on Earth, 1 in a million things are happening constantly.
All the time. Every single day. But what about the stories we hear? The person who missed their flight and the plane crashed. That feels like divine intervention.
That's where the source talks about survivorship bias. It's a really powerful psychological filter.
Okay, explain that.
We focus on the one person who survived and we say, wow, God saved them. But we completely ignore the 200 other people who got on the plane and died.
So if God saved the one, he let the others die.
Exactly. When you look at the full data set, the miracle just vanishes. It looks like random chance again.
The author also brings in the philosopher David Hume here with Hume's razor.
Right, what's more likely?
Hume's logic is this. When you hear a miracle story, you have two choices. Option A. The fundamental laws of nature, which have held true for billions of years, were suddenly broken.
Or option B.
The person telling the story is lying or mistaken or hallucinating. And since we know humans make mistakes all the time,
it's always more probable that the person is wrong than that the laws of physics are wrong.
That's Hume's point.
Okay, let's move to chapter 4, which tackles what might be the biggest emotional hurdle for a lot of people: morality. The fear that if there's no God, we'd all just run wild.
It's the classic Dostoevsky argument. If God is dead, everything is permitted. But the source argues this completely ignores our biology. We're social animals.
So being good isn't a divine command, it's a survival strategy.
Think about our ancestors. If you were a psychopath who stole and killed, what would the tribe do?
They'd kick you out and you'd die alone.
Right. We developed empathy and cooperation because those traits help the group survive. They're hardwired into us.
And the source points out we see this in other animals too.
We do. Chimpanzees, dolphins, wolves. They show what looks like moral behavior. They share food, care for the sick, grieve their dead, and they haven't read any holy books.
The author also makes a distinction between secular and religious morality. They seem to suggest the secular version is actually better.
Well, the argument is that it's less transactional. I mean, if you're only being good because you want to go to heaven or you're scared of hell, is that true morality?
Or is it just a cosmic cost-benefit analysis?
It's a business deal. The source suggests that doing good just because you feel empathy for another person is a higher, purer form of ethics. And they point to real-world data, like Scandinavia.
Very secular countries.
Some of the least religious populations on Earth. And yet, they have incredibly low crime rates, low corruption, high social trust. The author uses this to argue that you clearly don't need a deity to have a moral society.
Okay, but even if we don't need God, billions of people still believe. That has to count for something, right? Chapter 5 tackles that. The argument from popularity.
The argumentum ad populum.
Yeah, the idea that 5 billion believers can't all be wrong.
The source is very blunt here. Truth is not a democracy. The history of science is basically a long, long list of things the vast majority of people got completely wrong.
Like the Earth being flat.
Or that the sun revolved around the Earth. I mean, literally everyone believed that. It was just common sense. The number of believers has zero bearing on whether something is actually true.
So why is belief so widespread then? The author talks about the geography of belief.
The birth lottery. I think this is one of the most powerful points in the whole piece. Your religion is almost entirely predictable based on where you were born.
Born in Bangladesh, you're probably Muslim. Born in Italy, probably Catholic.
It's cultural conditioning. If faith were an objective truth, like gravity, it wouldn't matter where you were born. Gravity works the same everywhere. Religion clearly doesn't.
To really hammer this home, the author uses this funny little thought experiment, the invisible purple unicorn.
It's brilliant because it's so absurd.
Yeah.
The idea is, if half the world suddenly started believing an invisible purple unicorn created the universe, would that make the unicorn real?
No, it would just mean a lot of people believe in a unicorn.
Exactly. The source argues belief persists because it gives us psychological comfort and helps social cohesion, not because it's actually describing reality.
And speaking of comfort, let's go to chapter 6, the efficacy of prayer. This is where the rubber meets the road. Does it actually work?
The author tackles this from two angles. Anecdotally, it's just confirmation bias again. We remember the one time a prayer worked and forget the 10 times it didn't.
But they also dive into a specific scientific study, the STEPS study.
Yeah, from Harvard Medical School. This is a huge piece of evidence. The study of the therapeutic effects of intercessory prayer. It was a massive controlled study on heart bypass patients.
So what did they find? Did prayer help?
Nope. Absolutely no difference in recovery rates between the group that was prayed for and the group that wasn't. But, and the source really focuses on this, there was a fascinating twist.
The performance anxiety part.
It's wild. There was a third group of patients who knew they were being prayed for. And that specific group, they actually had slightly worse health outcomes.
Wait, knowing people are praying for you made it worse?
The theory is it created psychological stress, a kind of performance anxiety, like, oh great, now I have to get better to prove their faith is working. That stress isn't good for recovery.
Wow. And the source zooms out to a global scale too.
Right. If prayer worked, we should see measurable patterns. Religious hospitals should have better cure rates. Natural disasters should avoid poorful communities. The fact that the universe seems so indifferent is, to the author, proof that prayer doesn't change anything.
Which brings us to our final chapter for today, chapter 7. Personal experience. This is the argument that says, I don't care about your studies. I feel God in my heart.
This is the ultimate fortress.
Yeah.
Right. You can't debate someone's personal feelings. Or can you? The source brings in neuroscience to suggest that, yeah, maybe you can.
It's all just brain chemistry.
The author explains that the brain is perfectly capable of generating what we call spiritual experiences on its own. Stimulating the temporal lobes can create a sense of a presence in the room. We see it with pilots under high G-forces, people in isolation.
So the feeling is real, but the cause is internal, not external.
Precisely. And the source loops this back to the diversity argument. If these feelings were a connection to an objective truth, everyone should feel the same thing. But Christians see Jesus, Hindus see Krishna. You hallucinate the God you were raised with.
And they build this psychological profile, the cosmic father.
It's a very Freudian idea, almost, that humans are just terrified of being alone in this huge, uncaring universe. So we invent a parent figure in the sky, someone who's watching over us, who loves us.
And there's that quote in the text, man feels God most when he feels most alone.
The source argues it's a coping mechanism. Emotional armor against existential dread, not a detection device for the supernatural.
So we've covered 7 pretty heavy chapters: the Watchmaker, holy books, miracles, morality, popularity, prayer, personal experience. What is the author's final verdict?
The conclusion is very blunt. God is a psychological refuge, a concept born of ancient fear and ignorance that we as a species no longer need. The universe just doesn't require a supernatural explanation.
Now, for a lot of people, that might sound incredibly bleak, but the source tries to spin it into something positive. Empowerment through atheism.
I think this is maybe the most important part for understanding the author's motive. They aren't trying to make you depressed. They're trying to empower you.
How so?
The argument is, if there's no cosmic guardian coming to save us, then we're the only ones who can. It puts all the responsibility right back on humanity's shoulders.
It's time to grow up and solve our own problem.
Exactly. If we want justice, we have to build just systems. We can't pray for it. The author argues this leads to a more urgent, active morality because this life is the only one we're going to get.
It really raises the stakes of being human.
It does. It suggests that reality, with all its flaws, is beautiful enough on its own. You don't need to add magic to it.
And remember, this was just the first 7 arguments. The author has 20 in total, so if you want to keep going down this rabbit hole, there's a lot more to explore.
It's a dense piece of writing. And even if you don't end up agreeing with the conclusion, it really forces you to take an audit of your own beliefs, to ask, why do I believe this? Is it evidence, or is it just comfort?
So here is the final thought from the source to leave you with. If we stop looking to the sky for a savior, how might that change the way we look at the person standing right next to us?
That's the real question, isn't it? If it's just us down here, we'd better make it count.
If you want to read the full breakdown, you can check out the blog post at Synapse Soul. It is a deep dive that keeps on diving.
Highly recommended for anyone willing to have their assumptions challenged.
Thanks for listening, everyone. Keep questioning the extraordinary common things around you. We'll see you on the next deep dive.
Take care.